what a government agency does when they're not telling the truth and they're trying to hide something. And the pattern recognition always goes to some form of scapegoating. We saw it at DOD when people refused the vax, they were scapegoated and driven out. We saw it at FBI when whistleblowers talked about spying at school board meetings and at Catholic churches, they were driven out. And now I take note of the fact that certain people at the Pittsburgh field office have been put on leave. And I've also seen the story change where initially the Secret Service was blaming folks in local government, and then there was admission that there weren't appropriate responses to requests for additional manpower. So what I'd really like to do with you is bring us into that process, because Senator Hawley now has a whistleblower saying there was a manpower request that was coming out of Pittsburgh, and headquarters Secret Service was putting downward pressure on the local agents to try to reduce the intensity of that manpower request. So give Congress a little sense, how does that get developed? And then what should we think about the fact that someone is saying that headquarters was trying to get people to not make requests of enhanced protection?
Well, I can give you an example from personal experience. I saw Senator Hawley's tweet. The Secret Service is going to rely on this and what they're trying to do now, and you're accurate in your analysis about how this cover-up is starting to work. What they're going to say is, well, there was no real formal request made. But here's an example, and then I'll tie something to something that happened to me. Imagine you're working for a company, a public company. It's actual accountability, stock will tank or whatever. You can't make products that'll kill people. You'll go out of business. If you do, there's a penalty. But imagine you're told by your safety guy, you're the CEO, and your chief safety officer says 50 to 60 times, hey, again, this widget has a defect. And if we put this out, it's going to kill someone. And it's clear after the 50th time that the CEO doesn't care. So at the 51st time you tell the product blows up, the CEO's going to say, well, he didn't tell me yesterday. Well, he didn't tell you because he told you 50 times before and you ignored him. So what they're doing now is Ron Rowe, the acting director, who is the deputy director, the number 2, who is unbelievably, again, got a promotion out of this. A guy was murdered and someone got promoted, which is obscene and disgusting. He is part and parcel to this whole day-to-day ADPO, Assistant Director, Protective Operations, Deputy Director, Director chain that makes management decisions. When they tell you early on, we are not doing this for President Trump, Congressman. We're not doing counter-sniper teams. We're not doing CSU. And then they say, well, on that day, we didn't deny assets. You didn't have to. You've been denying them for 4 years. I was told by a direct source, this is the quote, that at Mar-a-Lago, they were begging the DTD, the Donald Trump detail, begging for enhanced security. We can't secure this place like this. And one of the quotes from one of those 3 people I just told you about was, we don't secure nightclubs. Really? What if a nightclub owner runs for president? You don't secure you secure whatever the hell they tell you to secure. That's not your job. That is what happened here. And that's what they're going to rely on. And that's where you guys, I think, have had the guts to take this on. Do not let them fall back on euphemisms and word games where they go, well, that specific day we didn't say no to any assets. Have you in the past? How often? Matter of fact, how many counter-surveillance teams have you actually dedicated? What percentage of Trump sites? How many CS teams? There's a story out there that was the first time counter-sniper Secret Service assets were ever used at a Donald Trump site? So you're telling me your most threatened protectee had no professional Secret Service overwatch? As Ben showed, these guys are more than skilled and competent. They don't need the Secret Service to tell them how to do their job.
I think that gets to this intent question that Congressman Mills framed up perfectly at the beginning of our discussion. Congressman Mills says the key question here is whether this was your run-of-the-mill government incompetence or whether you see features of such just disregard for the duty at hand that you believe there's some malice. And in his opening statement, Mr. Prince says when the incompetence reaches a certain point, you can impute the malice to that. And what I think you have unique experience in is, well, like this culture of denying requests, like to Trump, or a circumstance where not even the Donald Trump detail, but the folks in the Pittsburgh field office who are not normally on the Trump detail were saying, hey, just based on this, we might need more, and they were discouraged from even making those requests, so they couldn't be denied. I think you can give us a lot of insight into the type of questions we need to be asking and of who to understand that culture, because like you think of the Secret Service, they're off with a number of of protectees, yes, right, of all kind of different profiles and different, I guess, priority, for lack of a better term. And so, like, what should we think about imputing malice at a point in which Donald Trump, one of the most threatened people on the planet Earth, is having to endure these denials and this culture of limited protection while you're seeing other details, beefed up substantially?
I think, and I don't think I put this out yet, but I'll put it out there now. When I was there, it was definitely not a political enterprise. It just wasn't. I never once, working for President Clinton, Bush, and Obama, had anyone even remotely implicate a political motive for any decision whatsoever. However, from the commentary directed at some of the agents in charge of the Donald Trump detail, which I have heard about, clearly, it appears that for the first time in American history, we have a Secret Service that is making decisions that may not be all political, but may have a political tinge to them. So what you're saying, I would love to say, Congressman, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But I tell you with a pure heart, and I'm being absolutely candid, I have no skin in this game. I don't work there anymore. I am not their PR guy. I run my own business. I absolutely believe Donald Trump and an enhanced security posture he should have had would have made him look more presidential, would have facilitated the logistical operation of him traveling. I think they were concerned about optics and making him look like a big shot or whatever, word you want to throw out there. And they were making some of these decisions based purely on grade school level politics.
I don't want to believe that, but I didn't want to believe it with the FBI either. I didn't want to believe it with the NIH either. I mean, a lot of these agencies that have been, I think, subject to political capture, we want to think of them as above that. And we all spend time around Secret Service. We're inspired by their patriotism and the willingness you have to literally take a bullet for someone if necessary. But just like in the military, just like at the FBI, I worry about the political capture happening at headquarters, and then that culture informing decisions in a way that's very damaging to the country. So what Mr. Bongino just said ought to be the most important work of the United States Congress, to figure out if these decisions were run-of-the-mill incompetence that you've got to deal with the better tech and the better processes and the better HR and getting rid of the DEI, but if it's something even darker and more devious than that, that must be rooted out, because what we've seen at these other agencies of government is it does not cure itself. It has to be excised, and that investigation is the most important work we can do. I thank you guys for leading this effort, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Gaetz. With that, I just want to go first to you, Mr. Prince. You said you roughly have about 3,500 at the peak of Blackwater, correct?
That's right.
Secret Service currently has approximately 7,000, approximately. What was your highest annual revenue, if you don't mind me asking, give or take, for that many operations?
Oh, for that, the protective mission was about 2,500 to 2,800, and that revenue would have been around $600 million.
So $600 million for that.
And again, that's deploying in a war zone where 41 of our men, my men, were killed.
So
in
safe
action.
to say, if you had $3.3 billion allocated to you, you could have done some even more miraculous things with resource and assets, correct?
I'll give a simple comparison. Around 2005, George W. Bush wanted to grow the size of the Border Patrol. I remember being called to a congressional hearing then because they compared what it would cost us to train a new CBP agent versus what the federal government was going to take. And our figure came in at their figure was actually higher than sending someone to Harvard for 4 years, and that's to train a guy for 4 months. That's it. So it's the federal government blows money. Like I said in my testimony.
And my point is that the failed metric of government, whereby the more we spend, the better outcome we receive, is a flawed and failed measure, which is why we're at $36 trillion in deficit. And the reason I use that $3 billion, as you know, Mr. Prince, is because that's the actual amount that appropriators have allocated to the Secret Service, which means that to Dan Bongino's comment, they shouldn't be utilizing past equipment to serve tomorrow. They should have more than enough assets and resources in place with a $3 billion budget. Would you not agree?
Certainly.
And I want to go to you, Mr. Bongino. I want to point out some things because culture failure, as my colleague has pointed out and others, I want to mention a couple of things. August 14, 2024 is reported failure that a Secret Service agent abandoned her post without permission to breastfeed child before Donald Trump was scheduled to arrive in North Carolina. August 12, 2024, it was reported that a Secret Service special agent who was an official site agent for the July 13 Butler PA rally is under investigation for posting videos and photos for protective assignments to social media. July 27, 2024, a Secret Service agent covered the security camera of a local salon in Pittsburgh, Massachusetts before an event featuring Kamala Harris where the salon was closed, but opened it up without approval and utilizing restrooms for an hour and a half while the building's security alarm was going off. July 2nd, 2023, it was reported that a former Secret Service Director Cheadle and senior agency leader sought to destroy the cocaine found in the White House in July of 2024. The evidence was not destroyed due to pushback in individuals in the Secret Service Forensic Service divisions. May 2024, a man enters the U.S. Secret Service Miami field office through a propped open door and was not removed from the building until the following morning. April 24, 2024, a special agent assigned to Harris's detail had a mental breakdown where the agent is reported to have physically attacked the commanding agent in charge at the base after verbal disputes with other agents. Sometimes during 2023 and 2024, at least 2 people breached President Obama's Hawaii residence. Though the president wasn't there at the residence, his 2 daughters were on premise at the time. April 2023, a drunken intruder entered the home of National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in the middle of the night. The man was able to gain access to Sullivan's home despite 24/7 Secret Service protective services in Sullivan due to the sensitive nature of his position. Now, I want to go back to a comment that you made, Mr. Bongino, where you said none of these problems are new. I think just the list of those that I've just mentioned shows that this is not a new problem, but it's existed for quite a while. And with a $3 billion annual budget, I would think that we would start evaluating those mistakes to make those corrective actions. Would you agree with the things that I've listed, with the budget that is allocated, that there should be a much better provision of security for protectees than what you're seeing today?
Oh, there's zero dispute about this. You know, Mr. Prince's company had accountability. People fire him and find a new company if he lost a protectee. You can't fire the Secret Service. 18 U.S.C. 3056, they're obligated to protect him. The Secret Service has a culture problem, Congressman. I was an instructor in our training academy in Beltsville, Maryland for 3 years. I ran operations over there, taught investigations over there, spent a little time in the control tactics unit. I was there for 3 years. Unfortunately, I can't count on one hand. I would need probably 2 and toes as well to count how many agents who could not meet even basic protective functioning skills and criminal investigative skills, but who met other criteria completely irrelevant to job performance, who were pushed through and told with a wink and a nod, this woman or man needs to graduate. Well, why? They're clearly incompetent. Every instructor who's encountered this person has said this person's incompetent to the point where in judgment drills, they're killing the protectee in the judgment drills. That's kind of not what we do. You're not supposed to shoot the protectee yourself in a simunition drill. And you would say things, you would hear things, excuse me, from special agents in charge, and I encourage you all to look into this, how the training center works and how they graduate students, where they would say, well, that person files a lot of complaints, like EEO complaints. Okay, well, are they real? That sounds serious. Sounds like a serious thing to me. I take that stuff seriously. And they would say, well, they file them enough that it's become a nuisance and they're not really legitimate, but because this person files a lot of complaints, we need to graduate them. Some of those people now, matter of fact, not just a few, but many are out on protective assignments now. And again, this is not...
So what you're saying is that DEI plays a major role, not meritocracy, with regards to the current culture that has been fostered.
No, not a. No, the major role. The Secret Service right now is dominated by DEI. It's not a role. It's the role. You ask agents on the president.
I think everyone's heard me say before, DEI equals DIE. You know, DEI stands for